Good evening, everybody. I'm Amrita Mahale. What makes today's theme space particularly interesting is the fact that I'm a rocket scientist. Well, almost. I trained as an aerospace engineer not once but twice, first as an undergraduate and then as a grad student. But after college, I moved to the world of consumer technology and management, working in business strategy and operations roles at some of the best companies in the world. But a decade into my career, I decided to quit my job to write my first novel. My novel Milk Teeth came out a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. In this country, it's not the most unconventional path, but my zigzag journey from aerospace to writing fiction has given me the opportunity to reflect on the creative vocation and what sets it apart from more structured and analytical professions. And it has also allowed me to see that in some ways the two are not very different from each other. In this talk, I'm going to explore different facets of the word space and how they have been a part of my creative journey, and the role that space and place have played in my work. I must warn you, I will use the word space very loosely, and I promise no profound insights either. It's hard to say things about the creative process that haven't already been said before. At the same time, I hope that the specifics of my creative journey will help illuminate for you not only my work, but the work of other artists. The pursuit of an art teaches you to be humble. Let's start at the beginning of my writing journey. I started writing seriously in my late 20s, many years after college. One pitfall of starting to do creative work relatively late in life is that you have consumed a lot of what you hope to create. So, even if you don't have any formal training, like me, you have a good instinct for what you want to achieve. For example, being a writer starts with being a good reader. And a big part of writing well is learning to read like a writer, which means developing the tools to learn how to dismantle books, to dissect scenes and characters, to see what really makes a story tick. So when you start writing for the first time, you know what a good story looks like. And it's very, very likely that the thing you just put down on paper, it's not very good. In fact, it's probably awful and will continue to be awful for a long time. This is a hard gap to reconcile with, the space between what you want to achieve and what you're capable of. And the only way to close this gap is through continuous practice. And yet, the responsibility of an artist with ambition is to see to it that this gap never vanishes. When you write or create any art, really, it's important to be humble, honest, curious, and disciplined. To attain mastery, you will need to study the work of those who came before you, those whose work will be far greater than anything you can hope to create soon. You will need to seek and take feedback, but also push back on self doubt. And there'll be many, many days of self doubt. But the most important thing is to start and keep moving forward, and to strive to close the creative gap, and at the same time make all efforts to keep pushing the gap to be wider. Now, let's talk about discipline for a moment. I am a creature of habit. This means that when I want to get any writing done, I need to sit down in the same place at roughly the same time to get anything done. On most days, I write at home at my desk, but I also occasionally write from cafes. And it's important for me to write at the same tables in these cafes with a fixed view because newness is often a distraction. Most of my writing days begin the same way. I try to write and I flounder for an hour or two. Either my writing is very stilted or the writer's block is very strong. But what sets apart the good days from the bad ones is whether I decide to give up or if I decide to go on. And if you can build this muscle, the muscle of persistence and grit, and if you can learn to be patient, half your job is done. And for me, it is from immersing myself in a familiar environment that this muscle memory of creativity really kicks in. I suppose artists, or at least writers, are a little like children in that way. They want structure and routine and sameness. And more generally, my advice to all aspiring writers is to create the space for their craft in their lives. Set aside time to practice, and once you've chosen this time, protect it fiercely. Protect it from friends and family. Say no to meetings. Say no to events. Say no to social events. Anything that's not critical, which will take you away from your practice. Look at your craft, look at this time as a physical entity that takes up real space in your life. And don't squeeze this into your busy life. Plan your life, especially your social life, around your practice. So I might have said that newness can be a distraction, but that's not entirely true. Life and art require some degree of randomness and chaos. And while most of my actual writing happens at a desk, I spend many, many hours every day thinking about the book I'm working on and the story and the characters. This is not writing, but it makes the writing possible. And no matter where the actual writing takes place, the spaces you occupy and pass through seep into your writing. There was a long scene in my novel, and this is a line that comes at the end of that scene, that was conceived almost entirely in the ladies' compartment of a local train, standing by the door. And for those of you who've taken a train or two, I don't think you needed me to tell you that this was conceived on a train. Plenty of anger on display in Mumbai can only happen on a local train, right? So I warned you that I was going to use the word space very loosely, and here is where the link becomes very tenuous, so bear with me. A big part of the craft of writing is editing, leaving things unsaid. My work relies heavily on world building, and even though I'm not a writer of fantasy or science fiction, this holds true. One thing that really irks me about realistic fiction, both in books and in films, and especially in the large number of films focused on Middle India that have become popular recently. So, yeah, what really irks me about many of these works of fiction is the fetishization of detail. And that's a mark of mediocre fiction. Does every single thought, every single piece of research need to make its way to the final work? Of course not. But then, how do you create a world for the reader, a world that is detailed, specific, real, and then cut out large chunks of it? Well, you do this by having faith in your reader, by trusting that if you leave some empty spaces in your work, their imagination will fill those. Let them do some of the work. Of course, editing requires instinct. It requires a good ear for rhythm. But those you get from learning to read like a writer. Cutting out bad writing is often very easy. What's harder is letting go of the parts that you're proud of or are attached to, or what editors call killing your darlings. But remember, sometimes empty spaces are good. I warned you, the link to space was very tenuous. What gives a city life is the people who live in it. For those of you who haven't read my book or have not heard about it, one of the central themes of my novel, and this is a topic I find myself returning to over and over again, is the question of how a city and its citizens shape each other. I really wanted to explore what a changing built environment tells us about the culture and history of a place. Let me tell you a little bit about my relationship with this city. So I was born in Bombay, but spent most of my childhood in Gujarat, till I moved back to the city as a teenager. My entire extended family, cousins, uncles, aunts, grandparents, all of them were in Bombay all along, so my summer and winter vacations were spent here. My own family moved every couple of years, so Bombay and later Mumbai became a fixed point of sorts in my itinerant childhood. It's the place I've always thought of as home, but from a distance. I'm fascinated by Mumbai's history, its architecture, and its place and form in our collective consciousness. It's also the city I know best. If you've seen the movie Lady Bird, it came out a few years ago, directed by Greta Gerwig. You might remember that the protagonist, who goes by the name Lady Bird, spends a lot of time in the first half of the movie complaining about the town she lives in, which is Sacramento in California. And then, sometime in the second half of the movie, she's applying to college and she's written her college essays, which the school principal has read. And the two of them are having a conversation, and the principal tells her, uh, beautiful essay, and your love for the city really shows. And Lady Bird's like, no, that's not true. So she said, it's very obvious you love the city. She said, no, I just pay attention. And the older woman says, but aren't they the same thing? And it's such a beautiful thought that love and attention are the same thing. Writing this book was an act of attention for me. It was an opportunity to learn about Mumbai and its history, its built spaces. I spent many years doing research for the book. I went to Asiatic Library multiple times to go through press archives. My novel is set in the 90s and unfolds from the 70s through the 90s. I was not alive for about half of that period, so there was a lot of research that had to be done. Yes, I went back to Asiatic Library several times, where there were always many, many people standing outside taking selfies and nearly no one inside. I spent many hours walking around the city with no aim or agenda. I learned how to see the same space through different eyes, the eyes of my different characters. Sometimes I took notes, but many times I did not. When the book was done, I remember thinking, wait, this is such a small, simple story. Why did it take me almost 4 years to write it? The truth is that a lot of time was spent exploring the city, doing research, and letting the facts stew in my head for such a long time that they began to feel like lived experience. 4 years, yes. It took me 4 years to write and edit my book. That's a long time. And you know why? It's because the process of writing is mostly torture. It's boring, it's grueling, and it's a test of grit and patience more than anything else. And it's a process which, in spite of my best efforts, I have not been able to rush. This passage from the novel Shalimar the Clown by Salman Rushdie has special significance to my journey as a writer, so I'm going to read it out, unlike everything else that was projected before. Sometimes your heart's desire hung from the highest branch of the highest tree, and you could never climb high enough to reach it. Or else, you just waited patiently and it fell into your lap. This quote has been typed up and at my writing desk for the past 7 or 8 years. If you think about it, it's terrible advice for a writer, especially if one's a procrastinator. But it also captures an essential truth about writing. To me, the quote is not about being passive, it's about patience. So much of writing, and possibly other forms of art too, is about playing with scenarios, combinations of words, turning over many possibilities in your head. For the longest time, nothing works. And then suddenly things fall into place. It feels like magic, but really it is a reward for not giving up. On the whole, the connection between art and space, between writing and space, is that a book is a complete world in itself. And what a privilege it is to be able to take someone on a journey through a space of our making, free from the gravity of real life, even if it's only for a few days or a few hours or even a few moments. And this privilege, this is why I write. Thank you.